host, RenTen ASMR. Tonight, we'll be painting the NFL playoff picture for the third year in a row. In this annual series, I take to 3D paint and I do my best mock-up of every team's logo while simultaneously explaining how I think the playoff picture will unfold in the upcoming season. So, be prepared for 32 very sloppy logos, along with some bold predictions about how the playoffs will unravel in the 2025 season. So, first up, we have the AFC North. We're going to go through all 8 divisions, and our first will be the north of the AFC. Here we have 4 teams, and the team that I think is going to finish in last place in the AFC North is the Cleveland Browns. This is a fairly easy pick. You look at the 4 teams in this division. This is clearly the one that has the most to prove, the most to improve, the most to prove. They are entering a situation with Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback, with Dylan Gabriel as the quarterback 2, Shadur Sanders as the quarterback 3, and Deshaun Watson far off, injured, may not even play. And yes, they did make the season, the playoff 2 seasons ago, but they're just in yet another quarterback hell. And I don't think that either of these rookie quarterbacks are going to be able to start early enough or develop quick enough to put this team in a playoff position, especially because the rest of the division is really good. So, that brings us to our third place finisher in the AFC North. And I think I'm going to give this to a team that plays in orange as well, similarly to the Browns. I'll be giving this to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, as much as I believe in Joe Burrow and in this offense, and I think that they are one of the teams that could topple the Chiefs when it comes to just toppling the Chiefs. Right now, it's been the Chiefs on top, and very few have proven that they can actually advance past the Chiefs. I think the Bengals are one of the few teams that have shown that in the playoffs they actually can do that. And Burrow and Mahomes has been a very nice rivalry to watch, but I don't think the front office has done a good enough job of keeping them in that striking distance. I think we saw them have a horrific defensive season last year and not really make any improvements on the defensive end. I'm not a huge fan of what their defensive free agency class looked like. I don't think that they were able to do all that much, even though reports are coming out that they're going to be able to retain Trey Hendrickson. That's not enough to cut it, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think it's another long season ahead for the Bengals. The only thing that could really happen is everyone that comes back from injury instantly makes an impact. The rookies instantly make an impact. In year 2, defensive coordinator somehow gets it going in a way that it didn't in year 1. We saw that kind of happen with Vance Joseph and the Denver Broncos. And I think the Bengals front office is just hoping under a second year, some consistency, things will click and the defense will be a lot better. But overall, the defense was one of the worst in the league last year, and I don't like anything that they've done to improve it. So yeah, it's like the team will be good. The team will probably finish just above 500. But with some luck, hopefully better outcome in terms of playoff seedings. But I do think that just on paper, they're his farewell tour. He will not play football again after this year. They got rid of Pickens in favor of DK Metcalf. They got rid of Najee Harris and picked up Caleb Johnson. Traded away Minka Fitzpatrick, got Jalen Ramsey, picked up Jonnu Smith. A slew of moves, and none of them really necessarily feel like they're in it to win it, in my opinion. I don't think that they're actually going to be necessarily much better than last year. Last year with Russell Wilson, I think that they achieved an adequate amount of success, and I think that they're due for much of the same. Like defensively, I think that they'll be strong, and I think that I still have a high faith in Coach Mike Tomlin to get the job done regardless of the roster. And as long as Aaron can stay healthy the whole year, I'm not really too down on them. It's just he's old, and if he gets hurt, they're cooked. But we've seen him take Mason Rudolph to the playoffs. We've seen him take Kenny Pickett to the playoffs so he can work with Aaron Rodgers. And yeah, I think defensively and offensively, they're just more well-rounded than the Bengals. The Bengals are really offensively heavy. But if DJ Watt and Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, then I think both sides of the ball are covered and they can finish as a second in this division. Finally, our first place finisher in the AFC North is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, I think on paper, have one of the best teams in the NFL. It kind of has felt like that every year for the last 5 years. You look at who they have and who they had. Last year it was Derrick Henry, the star-studded running back, and we saw how much better they got. And now you go out and you get an excellent cornerback in Jair Alexander, and you pick up DeAndre Hopkins on the tail end of his career, but still, they're looking to make life easier on on Lamar, which is nice, because they didn't always try and do that, but getting him a guy like that, I think at least locker room wise, he'll be happy, and he has already gone out and said that this could be the best roster that he's played with, and I think that could be true. Like, we saw them lose a lot of folks last year, but they responded really well to it, and heading into this season, I feel like there's more acquisitions than losses in the noteworthy category. So, overall, I'm hopeful for the Ravens. I think that they will finish as a strong number one in this division once again, and I don't think that we'll see them start off nearly as sloppy as they did last year. I think defensively they figured it out with Hamilton playing where he does now. And I don't think they'll start off 0-2. I think that they can finish better than last year's record. So, with that, we go into our second division in the AFC, and this will be the AFC East. Now, in the AFC East, our last place finisher will be going to the New York Jets. The Jets. Smith, who I think was really valuable as a target for Tua. Bringing in Minka is nice, but I don't think that their defense is looking all that sharp. I don't know if I really trust Tua to make it through the whole season, if I'm being honest. It's just a huge variable. Tyreek another year older. I think this team's best days passed, in my opinion. I think that they had a solid run. They were able to make some noise, but overall, the Bills have outlasted them. If they had gone ahead of them 2 years ago and won the division, it might be a different situation. But based on last year, this team was 2-4 when Tua was out. 6-5 with him in. No, maybe with him. Does that sound right? They were 6-5 with him in for sure. Were they 3-3 with him? I don't recall if they won 8 or 9 games. I don't know. You've just proven that you're exceptionally mid. You're mid unless you play against bad teams. And yeah, I think the shtick is up. I think that they are not going to be able to fool us any longer. The Dolphins had their run, but it's done. Coming in at number 2 in the AFC East, I got the New England Patriots. And I told you guys in the Power Rankings video, I don't think that the Patriots have the ability to improve enough to make the playoffs. And I'm still sticking by that. I think that they're going to see massive improvements to this team. And I think that it could culminate in 5 extra wins. But I don't think it's enough to push the needle that far. But I think with the new head coach, new offensive coordinator, plus all the weapons on offense and defense, they've done a great job of retooling this team. And under a young quarterback who's primed to break out, they will make a step forward. And they'll finish second. I don't know if they'll finish necessarily positive. I could see them finishing 8-9, which is a huge step up from 4-13. Maybe they're good enough to finish 9-8, but not quite at that playoff level yet, which I'm only going to give to the Buffalo Bills. I think that the Bills are winning this division once again. Offensively, defensively, they've shown us that it doesn't really matter. They've got the NFL reigning MVP on their team. As long as they've got him and McDermott, the team will rally and perform and lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs. So, bringing us to our third division, which is going to be the AFC West. And in the AFC West, our 4th team, our bottom seed, is unfortunately going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. Now it really crushes me that the Raiders have to sit at the bottom of this list because they've done so much to improve upon their entire organization from last year. You've gone out and you've gotten an actual quarterback in Geno Smith. You've signed a head coach in Pete Carroll as a proven winner. You can revitalize any place. You got a strong running back in Ashton Genty. You've made a couple moves on defense. You got recently Amari Cooper. I think overall, the Raiders have done so much to get this organization back on track. But the reality of the matter is, all 3 of the other divisional opponents made the playoffs last year. And I think they're all just better still than the Raiders. The Raiders have never operated under this regime. All the other teams have some sort of consistency from the previous year, and I don't think any of them got that much worse that the Raiders could go from being like a 4-win team to leapfrogging a playoff team. It's just a far-fetched reality. I mean, barring injury could always strike and that would change this, but just, I respect what they did. It's not enough. Next up, in third place in the AFC West, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, I think they have a lot of good rookies on their team, but I can't imagine that all of their rookies are going to make an impact that big that they're actually able to improve compared to last season. I think that they did remarkably well under Jamarba year one. I think he'll be a good coach. He'll continue to keep them in a winning status. But this team is heavily reliant on its new rookies, and with Rashawn Slater going down, new backfield entirely, still kind of a ragtag guys out wide receiver. You have Lad McConkey and aging Keenan Allen, but then just a bunch of guys who have not proven themselves in the slightest. The defense isn't quite as young or spry as they once used to be. I'm not feeling it, so I'm gonna have them finishing in third. I don't have them finishing better than they did last year. Coming in at second place in the AFC West, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Chiefs' time at the top of this division has perhaps come to an end with the news today of Travis Kelce getting engaged to Taylor Swift. I think this is the start of the end for the Chiefs. Not really. I think that this season is just going to be more prone to disaster than they've typically had to deal with. Even though they finished as 15-2 and made the Super Bowl once again, I think it was a humiliating loss. And when you look at what they got in the offseason, I don't think it's really any better. I think that their offensive line has been gutted. I think that they're overpaying the guys who have performed, and the offensive situation with Rashee Rice, it's not that good. They really do depend on him heavily. When he is playing, they're really good. Without him, the offense dips quite a bit, and I personally don't think he's going to play that much of this season. I think that he's going to get suspended for quite a few games. The offense is going to take a hit defensively. Defensively, they'll be fine. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to miss the playoffs or anything like that, but I think that there's finally a formidable enough opponent in this division that we could actually see the Chiefs fall. It's been all Kansas City for the last 6-7 years straight, but I think we finally might see some competition, give them a run for their money this year, which is why I have the Denver Broncos in first place for the AFC West. I know that I'll probably look back at this with some crazy shocked eyes, but at least at the moment I feel pretty good about this. I think we take a look at how the Broncos finished last year. In a surprise year, I didn't think that they could actually get that much better. I didn't think they could make the playoffs, and they proved me wrong. They brought in a bunch of guys, they made the right moves, and they were able to finish as the 7th seed. And I took that, and I was so ready to dismiss it. And then they had just an excellent free agency. Offensively, they bring in Evan Ingram to round out that tight end position, plus bring in J.K. Dobbins and draft R.J. Harvey, so they have a much better running back room. I think all areas of offense, I trust them more now. And then defensively, I think they have the best defensive free think that they'll have the best defense in the league. I think offensively, I trust them more. And just overall, I think this is finally a team that could take that one seed in the division away from the Chiefs. And I'm going to leave it at that. We'll see how it pans out. So our final AFC division is the AFC South. And at the bottom of the AFC South, I have the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts recently announced that Daniel Jones will be making the start in Week 1 over Anthony Richardson. And it's a decision based on consistency, based on who's been doing the best. Richardson has taken it. He's graciously accepted that he's not good enough to beat Daniel Jones. I think your organization is doomed for failure this season. It's the writing on the wall. They're not going to be a playoff team under Daniel Jones. Look at the Giants the last couple of years. He literally got cut. I think it's going to be horrible. It's going to be quite tragic. At best, you can hope for like a Panthers Bryce Young situation like last year. But at this point, they're maybe cutting their losses on AR. If not, it's going to be a late switch after like 4 weeks of horrible play from Anthony Richardson. Yeah, I think that the Colts fans are going to want to dismember themselves by the time the season is over. So, taking us to our third place finisher in the AFC South, I've got the Tennessee Titans. I think the Titans will be better than they were last year under rookie quarterback Cam Ward, but I think there's just a lot of issues that they need to address with all aspects of their team. It's not going to be enough that they have a new quarterback. It's not like that was the only thing. We're going to have to still assess the coaching, assess the O-line, assess the offense as a whole. I think defensively they have some strengths, but I still wouldn't characterize them as a good defense by any means. So they're trending the right way, but I don't think that this is going to be one of those situations we've seen in the last 2 years with C.J. Stroud or Jaden Daniels, where you bring in a rookie guy and he just flips the team on his head and makes them an instant contender. I think the important thing to know with both of those situations is you had a first-year head coach with them. You have D'Amico Ryans coming in. You had Dan Quinn coming in. Now you have still the same coach as last year. I don't think that it's going to have the same recipe of success, and I think those guys, they were stronger quarterback prospects than Cam Ward, so I'm going to keep the Titans finishing at 3. And in second place, I'm going to give it to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that the Jaguars, under new head coach Liam Cohen, will be significantly better than they were last year. I think that Trevor Lawrence will have a bounce back. He'll be looking like a good quarterback once again. I think the running back room will be led by a committee, and it will be more successful. Offensively, I don't think that the weapons are all that great outside of Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, but I think that they will find a way to get it done the same way the Buccaneers found a way to get it done when both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were absent from the lineup. And yeah, I'm expecting a bounce back season from this Jags team. I think they'll be fun to watch. And finally, finishing in first place in the AFC South, I've got the Houston Texans. I think that the Texans, they had a lot of pressure last year. They made a lot of big moves, and it looked like they were going to be a lot better than the season before, in which they already had made major improvements, but due to some injuries and O-line concerns, they weren't able to be quite as good as people were hoping. Nonetheless, still went out things to be happy if you are the Texans or a Texans fan. I think even though you had a little bit of a rough offseason, you're still the top dog in this division. It's still Texans o'clock until further notice. Yeah. Interested to see how they will respond to the changes. The loss of Laramie Tunsil and Joe Mixon starting off on IR, and Tank Dell Stanner starting off on IR, and Stephon Diggs no longer being on the team. But I think that they've gotten a handful of new guys. Christian Kirk, the Iowa wide receivers, Nick Chubb. Like, they're trying their best to cut their losses. We'll see, or not cut the losses, but fill their gaps. So, yeah, we'll see. So, with that, we can transition into the NFC. The NFC has 4 divisions as well, and we will be predicting our 4 playoff teams after we go over each division. So far I've just done the AFC analysis of 1 through 4, but I haven't actually revealed who I have going to the playoffs, and that'll come at the end after the NFC analysis. So first up, we have the NFC North, and in 4th place in the NFC North, I'm giving it to the Minnesota Vikings. I did this last year, and I'm willing to do it again. I think that the Vikings don't have what it takes to finish higher than 4th. I think I'm going to get the same comments, and I'm going to maybe look equally as foolish again. But I think that this time the Bears really have the means to topple the Vikings and take that 3rd place. Well, I mean, yeah, they finished in 2nd place last year, 14 wins. Great. You guys were your phonies, though. We saw it exposed in real time in week 1 of the playoffs. And yeah, I think the hype train is over. The fluke is gone. You're gonna have rookie J.J. McCarthy. He has a surrounding cast that is great. But I don't think you're gonna have nearly as good of a season. I think that the division will stay competitive, and the Vikings will be first. And I think it's really not that they'll be worse by, like, I don't think they'll be a bad team. I think this could easily finish as like a 9-win team still. But I think that the Bears can do a little better, which is why I have the Bears in 3rd. I think that the Bears started off really strong last year and completely imploded, fired their coaching staff, and shit hit the fan. So, seeing how they started last year, we know that they can be a good team. They just could not consistently be a good team. And I think, coaching-wise, they made the right call. They've gotten their guy in Ben Johnson. Offensively, I like who they have. Defensively, I like who they have. I think that they have the right pieces to be a winning football team. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? We'll find out. But overall, I like the improvements that they've made, and I think that it's enough to put them in 3rd in the division. 2nd place, I'm leaving it to the Green Bay Packers. I think that the Packers, they have a good opportunity to go in for 1st place in this division, if I'm being honest. They have a strong team, they have a strong coach, they're very proven. The biggest drawback is their defense. I don't like their secondary one bit. I think defensively, they don't strike any fear in my heart, and that's really why with the Lions going through so much instability, so much turnover, I would be less high on them, but I'm not high at all on the Packers defense, so I can't really make any claim that the Lions can slip from their throne. Offensively, I think that the Packers realistically, it's like you have one of the hardest strengths of schedule in the league. I think it's the second or third hardest in the league this year. And yeah, you're losing both coaches, which we saw what happened to the Eagles 2 years ago. They went to the Super Bowl. They were extremely successful, went to the Super Bowl, lost both Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. And the following year they picked up, but then they fell apart. And I think that it's going to be a little bit of a battle. They are in for a worse season. But overall, I think defensively I like their players more. I think that I like the talent that they have on their team. I like their head coach still more overall than I do the Packers. So I'm going to keep them at the 1. So I think that they're in for a worse season. I think that 15-2 is absurd. I don't think we're going to see that again this year from them. But they'll still be the first place finisher. Now our second division in the NFC is going to be the NFC East. And in fourth place, I have the New York Giants. The Giants, I think that they have a good D-line. They're going to be much better for quarterbacks. I just think that there's too many cooks in the kitchen with how well Jackson Dart has played in the preseason. I think that they're going to be tempted to want to see what they have in him. I think that means with all their other quarterbacks, they're going to give them a shorter leash because they want to head more towards a rebuild than they do on winning now. I think the division's way too loaded to win right now with Russell Wilson, and they're going to realize that at some point something's going to happen, and they're going to be like, scrap it, let's just go with Jackson Dart, because if we have him, maybe we can kind of compete in the future. We can build around Dart and compete. And I think that Dart has proven to be, he looks good. He looks quite good. Obviously it's against second and third team defenses in preseason, but I think they're curious. I don't think that Russell Wilson has all that much left in his career. I don't know why they would necessarily want to play Russell Wilson for multiple years if they know they have no chance of competing. I don't think that this is going to be a relationship that maybe Wilson plays all 17 games and they do fine, but I think even then at best they finish third, realistically. I think they were horrible last year. For them to finish as a winning team, it'll be tough. So in third place, I have the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys, for a while I was thinking they could be a sneaky playoff team, and then I remembered that they hired Brian Schottenheimer as their OC, as their head coach, their old OC as their head coach. I don't think that he's going to be that good. I think that was a bad decision for coaching. And then with Micah not being signed, I think these two things are going to limit them. Defensively, I don't think that they'll be good enough, especially if they lose Micah Parsons. I'm not very high on their defense. Offensively, I think that they can be really good in the wideouts and in the passing game. It'll be phenomenal. Running back room is pretty ugly. I think that they could be the NFC's version of the Bengals. And yeah, that's about it. I don't think anything past that. And then in second place in the NFC East, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that the Eagles will fall and will have a Super Bowl slump. And this will be for two reasons. Number one, actually three reasons. Number one, Kellen Moore being off of the offense. Last time when they lost their offensive coordinator after making the Super Bowl, we saw how that affected them. They weren't quite the same. Number two, the defensive losses. These guys lost so many starters in free agency. I'm talking 5-6 starters. And yes, they do still have their North / the NFC East. No repeated champions. These, superstitions working against you. As much as it doesn't make sense to put any faith in superstition, we haven't seen a repeat winner in the NFC East, I think, since I've been watching football. And, yeah, the man curse. Look at the 49ers. They went from the Super Bowl to being worse than their division. So I think it's very okay for us to just temper our expectations and not think that they're going to dominate the division again. And finally, in first place in the NFC East, I have the Washington Commanders, and I think the Commanders getting the Terry McLaurin deal done shows that they realize the gravity, the importance of signing him by retaining him. You can take a look at the moves they moved this offseason and actually be happy. I think there was a lot of nervousness on my end about how good the Commanders would be if McLaurin was gone, but they made the right decision. They paid him. Now, you look at their additions like Deebo Samuel, that would be good. They get rid of Brian Robinson Jr. because they have maybe a stud in Jaguars. Man, I always forget his last name. But yeah, running back room is going to look a little different. I think defensively, offensive line with Laramie Tunsil, they've made a bunch of moves. I might be overrating them. They could be like the Texans, but at the end of the day, I think they'll finish number 1 in this division. I think that they're ready to compete. They're making the right moves. Overall, they've gotten better compared to last year. And, yeah, rather than worse. And I think when you look at the Eagles have gotten worse in a lot of ways. So I think that the Eagles will fall a bit. The Commanders will gain a little bit, and that'll allow them to leapfrog one another. So that brings us to our third division in the NFC, which is going to be the NFC West. And in the NFC West, my fourth place finisher is going to the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle finished 10-7, tied for the best in this division last year. But this was a very close division when you look at the best and the worst. Two best teams finishing at 10-7, the worst team finishing at 6 and 11. So they weren't all that far off from one another. And even at 10-7, you couldn't make the playoffs. Now you don't do much to address your O-line. You get rid of your offensive coordinator, get rid of your quarterback, some of your biggest weapons offensively. There's a lot of change. Defensively, I don't think that you made any stellar moves. And offensively, I'm not a fan of the moves that you made in terms of getting better. I think that you are trying desperately to cling to just as good. And in an ideal world, you can finish 9-8. But I think realistically, you're looking more at like a 7-10 season. I think in this division, that will be the worst. Followed by the third place finisher, who will be the Arizona Cardinals. I think that the Cardinals, they just didn't do much. They got Josh Sweat, but they didn't do much offensively. I think it'll be an offensive bottleneck where they just can't compete with other teams. Yes, they might have one game where they go off for 40 and it looks great, but they're not doing anything to support Kyler Murray. And I think that it's going to be close to the end of his tenure with the Cardinals. The other teams in the division, I think, will be adequate enough. I think it'll be somewhat close. They won't be horrible. By no means will the Cardinals be horrible, but I think that they're due for yet another 8-9, 9-8 season. They're going to be made. That's as much as I can project them to be. I think that they could finish 9-8. I think that the Seahawks will take the cake for the worst, and I think the Cardinals will potentially finish as 9-8. But that is it. I think they fizzle out at that. In second place, we've got the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams, I think, realistically have the talent to go all the way to be the number 1 seed. But I'm worried about Matthew Stafford's back. I'm worried about the health of Matthew Stafford. He does not look promising. He is making his way back. Yes, this is true. But for his back injury to be as prominent as it is, I think he tweaks it once, and they are really in for a rude awakening. So it's all about Stafford's health heading into the season. And if Stafford doesn't stay healthy, it's back to the drawing board, because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be able to lift them. They might be able to already be like a playoff caliber team, and he might be able to maybe just barely keep them at 500. But I think if like Stafford is hurt in the first half of the season, they were done. So, and finally, the team that I have going from worst to first this year is the San Francisco 49ers. And I know when I made my power rankings video, I said I'm not too sure that the 49ers can actually do it and make the playoffs. And then I realized they have the easiest strength of schedule of any team in the NFL, coupled with the fact that they had the smallest margin of difference between the best team in their division and the worst. On average, you had much bigger gaps. When we take teams that go from worst to first historically, they're adding 5, 6, 7, 8 wins, at minimum 5 wins from where they were. And if you take a look at the 49ers roster last year, they were very injured, and you add 5 wins to that team. They go from 6 to 11 wins. That is good enough for first in this division. The playoff team only won 10 games. Now, any other division in the league, it doesn't fare like that. Even the Titans, if you add 5 to them, they can't catch up to the Texans. Historically weak team. Same is true for, I guess, the Saints. They would catch up, but I don't know if they have a tiebreaker or not over the Buccaneers. But this is like the most clear example of a team that can make a few adjustments this year, just be a little more healthy, has an easy schedule, and honestly, I think they can. Like the 49ers 2 seasons ago, being in the Super Bowl, they're very hurt. They're going to be more healthy. Yes, they're not the same team, but do I think this team can win 10 games, 11 games? Yeah, I do. And if that's all that's needed to win the division, then so be it. Like, I don't think that they'll be worse than the Seahawks and the Cardinals, so it's really just the Rams. And I think overall they have a more likely chance to be healthy than the Rams, because the Rams' season really rides with one guy. I think everyone else, like obviously, yeah, if Brock Purdy got hurt, it would be really bad. They'd fall apart immediately. But I think I'm less concerned about the other injuries that they have, because they've had to work through those. The Rams, I don't think that they have any backup plan if Stafford goes down, and they're trying their best to put him out there, but they might rush him. They might rush his injury timeline, and it could be ugly. So I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers, coming back to the top of the NFC West, which brings us to our last division. And our last division is the NFC South. Fourth place in the NFC South, I will be awarding to the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints, I have said this before, I will say it again. I think they think you need to get your quarterback for the future. I think you achieve that by being a really bad football team. So I'm recommending tank all the way through for the Saints. So that brings us to third place. I think third place, yeah, I'm going to give third place to the Carolina Panthers. I think that the Panthers are due for some positive regression and some improvement, but I think that their defensive free agency wasn't as impressive. I think that J.C. Horn, if he can stay on the field, and if Bryce Young can play as well as he did in the second half of last year, then maybe, I think we could maybe see a reality where the Panthers are good enough to make the playoffs. But I think that, like, in this division, it really is dependent on winning the division. I'm not going to predict two teams to make the playoffs out of here, because that's absurd. It's the NFC South. You're going to win 8, 9, 10 games, and you're going to make the playoffs, and that's about it. And sometimes you just need 8. And I don't think that'll be the case this year. But if it comes to that, I think that the Panthers can win 8 games, and maybe it's a reality where 8 games is the winning seed. So we'll see. Maybe they can do it. Maybe 9 games. After that, I'm going to put the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, I was really high on them last year with Kirk Cousins, and I've had to take a step back. I'm still pretty high on them. I think that they can do fairly well. That's why I'm putting them at second in this division above the Panthers. I think that with Penix, I think Penix will be able to give the offense the lift that they need to be average. Like, I think that he can be successful. I think he'll give them the lift to stay above the Panthers. But I don't want to jump the gun on the Falcons again in another year. So first place, I'm going to keep it with the Buccaneers. I think that the Buccaneers have been good the last 2 years, and I've given them no credit for it. 2 years ago, I picked the Saints to be the number 1 in the division under Derek Carr. Last year, I gave it to another veteran QB that got added to the division in Kirk Cousins. And I need to just assess the situation for what it is, which is that the Buccaneers are on top. The Buccaneers are looking like they're the best team in this division, and they really can run with anyone in the NFC. They beat the Lions, they beat the Eagles, and any given week, yes, they will throw interceptions, they'll turn the ball over, they'll have sloppy weeks, but they can compete. They have a high volume offense, and they can compete with a lot of teams out there, and so I need to give them the respect that they are due and have them finish as first in this NFC South. So, with that, we are ready for our playoff picture reveal. In the AFC, in first place, I have the Baltimore Ravens. In second place, I have the Buffalo Bills. And the reason why I have the Bills in second place is because I think, you look at the strength of schedule, they have the easiest strength of schedule out of any team that made the playoffs last year. So I think that they'll win enough games that they can finish second, even though I don't think that their defense is that great. Number 3, I've got the Denver Broncos topping the AFC West. And number 4, I have the Houston Texans, which brings us to our 3 wildcard teams, of which number 1, I think is going to the Kansas City Chiefs, no doubt. I don't think that they will finish any lower than this. I think it's blasphemy enough that I have them not finishing at the top of their league, of their division. So this is as far as I'm willing to let them slip. At number 6, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think this is injury dependent. I think if Rodgers gets hurt, I'm throwing them out. But if he is able to stay healthy the whole year, I think can finish as the 6th. And in 7th place, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. I think we could see all 3 teams from the AFC North enter the playoff picture. I think the Bengals are right around there, and they just need a little bit more luck on their side, and maybe they'll get it this year. But if I had to pick an honorable mention that I think could really take over as the 6 or 7, I go with the Jags. I think that the Jags can have a strong enough bounce back. Jags or Patriots as those 2 honorable mention teams that I think are going to finish in the 8 and 9 range. That I don't think they'll be in the playoffs, but I think that they are the biggest risers that will be floating at like just outside the playoffs. And then for the NFC, in first place, I have the Washington Commanders. In second place, the Detroit Lions. In third place, the San Francisco 49ers. In fourth place, the Buccaneers. In fifth place, the Rams. In sixth place, the Packers. And in seventh place, the Eagles. I think that the Eagles are really going to struggle. I think that they're going to be good, but I think that they're going to struggle and make the playoffs on a thread. 2 years ago, we saw what happened. This year, I feel like they've lost even more so. And with the NFC East, just the way it works out, I think that we very much could see an Eagles team that's in the playoffs, but just like barely making the mix. I think that the honorable mention team that I think is going to give them the most run for their money is the Chicago Bears. I think that the Bears are in that category where we could see them compete to make the playoffs, but I think ultimately they'll still miss it. I think it's 1 year too soon. They still need to develop, they still need to right the ship. They won 6 games last year. I don't think it's out of the picture for them to win 9, to win 10. 10 might not be good enough to make it, is the problem. We saw that last year with the Seahawks. It could be a very tight-knit race in the NFC once again, and 10 games could keep them out. I think that the Eagles, Packers, and Rams all have strong cases for why they should remain in the playoff picture. Rams, it's health dependent. Packers, I think it's defense dependent. Eagles, I think on both sides of the ball, they'll struggle this year. They'll have the Super Bowl hangover. We've seen a lot of teams have Super Bowl hangovers as of late, especially out of the NFC. So how the Rams fell off after winning, how the 49ers and Eagles fared after making it. I think it's a trend that we need to pay attention to. So I have the Eagles barely slipping in at the 7, but the Rams hanging around outside at the 8. And those are my final playoff predictions for this year. So if you agree, disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. These are somewhat thought out, but I feel like we're gonna get to the end of the season and I'll be like, wow, that was silly. Nothing too egregious this year. I don't think. It's not like I have the Bills out of the playoffs like I did last year. Anything like that. Some of them are bold, maybe 49ers jumping back up into the 3 seed, plus the Broncos overtaking the Chiefs. But I think these are realistically things that could happen. So yeah, let me know. As far as upcoming content, I think I'm sick. I think I'm starting to come down with a sickness. And I'm going to be traveling from Thursday through Monday. I'm going to be going to Washington, D.C., so that kind of throws a wrench in my ability to record anything. But Tuesday I'll be back with my Week 1 predictions for the first week of the NFL, because we're back. So be on the lookout for that, and be on the lookout for the Google form with a sign-up sheet. We're gonna have one fantasy football league this year, and the draft time is gonna be posted in the Google form. It's gonna be drafting next Wednesday, and there will be a buy-in. So, details for how that will work will be in the Google form, and if you're interested, please sign up. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you